Donald Trump once stood by Volodymyr Zelensky.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. We gave you through this stupid president.
But now he's openly criticizing the Ukrainian leader. Why did Trump change his stance? What's driving him to call Zelensky ungrateful? There's more to this rift than meets the eye. What's really going on behind the scenes? Get ready for unexpected twists that will leave you stunned. For more informative videos, subscribe to InfoCircuit. Today, we delve into one of the most controversial relationships in global politics, the one between former President Donald Trump and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. As the conflict between Russia and Ukraine intensifies, something unexpected has happened. Trump, once a supporter of Zelensky's struggle, now finds himself criticizing the very leader he once backed. But what caused this dramatic shift? What's behind Trump's anger? Let's explore the complex dynamics of this political fallout. The Russia-Ukraine war, which began in February 2022, has evolved into a devastating conflict with far-reaching global consequences. Ukraine, fighting for its sovereignty and survival, faces Russia's overwhelming military force. In the early days of the war, the United States and Western nations rallied behind Ukraine, providing financial, humanitarian, and military aid. But as the months passed, cracks began to appear in the unity of the Allies, especially between President Zelensky and some key figures in the U.S. political landscape. One of the most significant and unexpected rifts came from the United States' former leader, Donald Trump. A man who, during his time in office, expressed admiration for Zelensky, suddenly turned against him, accusing him of being ungrateful and mishandling U.S. support. The tensions reached a boiling point, leaving many to wonder, why did Trump, a man who once seemed to support Ukraine's fight for freedom, become so enraged with its president? When Volodymyr Zelensky was first elected in 2019, many in the U.S. were optimistic about the potential for strong relations between the two nations. Trump, with his
America first
ideology, saw an opportunity to forge a unique bond with Zelensky, who was an outsider in Ukraine's political scene. Much like Trump himself was in the U.S. in 2019, Trump famously found himself embroiled in a scandal involving Zelensky, an event that led to Trump's impeachment. Trump had pressured Zelensky to launch an investigation into Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, who had business dealings in Ukraine. Though the impeachment didn't lead to Trump's removal from office, it set the tone for a complicated relationship between the two. However, in the wake of the invasion of Ukraine, Trump's rhetoric shifted. He expressed his admiration for Zelensky's leadership in the early months of the conflict, calling him a brave leader and offering support. But as the war continued, Trump's tone began to sour. The first signs of Trump's frustration with Zelensky appeared when the Ukrainian president began making public demands for more substantial military aid. Zelensky, while grateful for the support, started to criticize the U.S. for not providing enough, especially when it came to heavy weaponry and air defense systems. Trump, who had always been critical of the way U.S. resources were being allocated overseas, saw Zelensky's comments as disrespectful. Trump, who prides himself on a transactional approach to diplomacy, felt that Zelensky was demanding more without acknowledging the sacrifices the U.S. was already making. Trump's anger intensified when Zelensky's government continued to make public calls for more resources. He accused Zelensky of taking advantage of the U.S. and undermining American interests. He began to question whether the billions of dollars sent to Ukraine were being used wisely. To Trump, this wasn't just a political disagreement, it felt like a personal betrayal. The issue of military aid became the centerpiece of the growing tension. Zelensky had become increasingly vocal in calling for more advanced weaponry, including fighter jets, long-range missiles, and modern air defense systems. His argument was simple. Ukraine was facing an existential threat, and without these weapons, they couldn't defend themselves effectively. Trump, however, felt that the U.S. was already doing more than enough. He argued that the U.S. was pouring billions of dollars into a foreign conflict, all while facing domestic issues like inflation, rising gas prices, and a struggling economy. He believed that it was time for Europe and other nations to take on a larger role, and that Ukraine needed to be more self-reliant. In addition to the military aid, another major point of contention between Trump and Zelensky arose from the issue of corruption within Ukraine. Trump, already known for his "drain the swamp" mantra, was frustrated by reports alleging that Ukrainian officials were mishandling U.S. funds. In particular, Trump seized upon allegations that some of the U.S. aid intended for Ukraine was not being properly accounted for. Though many of these claims were unsubstantiated, they provided Trump with ammunition to attack Zelensky. He accused the Ukrainian government of being corrupt and wasteful, arguing that American taxpayers shouldn't be funding a war effort if the money wasn't being used effectively. As the war dragged on, the clash of national interests became more apparent. While Zelensky sought to strengthen Ukraine's position by rallying the world behind his cause, Trump's America First philosophy pushed him to question the role the U.S. should play in the conflict. He began to see Ukraine's demands for more aid as unreasonable and out of step with American priorities. In private, Trump was also deeply frustrated by what he saw as Zelensky's unwillingness to compromise. Trump believed that Zelensky had not been diplomatic enough in dealing with European leaders, particularly those who had the power to provide Ukraine with more aid. The tension between Trump and Zelensky reached its peak in late 2023, when Trump began to publicly criticize Zelensky during rallies and media appearances. He called the Ukrainian president ungrateful and reckless, accusing him of pushing the U.S. into a never-ending war. In response, Zelensky defended his actions, reiterating that Ukraine had no choice but to continue the fight. He stressed that every weapon, every dollar sent from the U.S. was crucial to Ukraine's survival. But the rift was clear. What was once a strong partnership was now a political battle that threatened to influence the future of U.S. foreign policy. The fallout between Trump and Zelensky has had significant consequences for both countries. On the global stage, the United States found itself increasingly divided over its support for Ukraine. While the Biden administration continued to provide significant aid, Trump's rhetoric and criticism made it clear that his potential return to office could mean a shift in policy. For Ukraine, the story is far from over. As the world watches, the complex relationship between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky will continue to shape the future of the war in Ukraine. Stay tuned as we follow this high-stakes conflict and its global implications. For more informative videos, subscribe to InfoCircuit.